Hey guys, Indie Explorer here. We got hit by quite the surprise yesterday. Exactly 1 year after its official release, 2 months after being named the 11th best Metroidvania of all time by a reputable media outlet, and 1 month after the release of a limited-time collector's edition, the news dropped that Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights will officially be getting more content. More content means more lore, and if you follow my channel, you know how passionate I am about that. In this video, I break down the cryptic announcement and go over everything we know about this future content so far, after which I discuss possible directions it could take based on the events of Ender Lilies and its true ending. The announcement comes in the form of this single image, which contains both a picture of what could be a scythe as well as several ciphers for both letters and numbers. The most basic of these is the alphabet cipher seen below modern Latin, which, when decoded, reads Ender Lilies' next project. Nothing too crazy there, just confirmation that this is an Ender Lilies project and not merely another project from the same developers. Interestingly, however, the sections for punctuation, numbers, and ancient Latin don't seem to be connected to this message, at least as far as I can tell, and may be indicating something else entirely. It could be that they are ciphers for future reveals that will have to be decrypted. Most notable is the symbol for 0, which is also defined as null or void. 6 letters from the Latin alphabet are marked with this symbol, G, J, V, W, Y, and Z, and annotated with another letter, C, I, Y, 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 and I, respectively. At first I thought these letters needed to be replaced in the secret message, but upon finding that only J is represented and yields only Ender Lilies' next project, I highly doubt that means anything. As for the number symbols, I did some research on the number 2048 and found it to be the name of a simple tile-based puzzle game released back in 2014. Probably no connection there, as I don't think Binary Haze is going to turn this into a puzzle game. As for 209, a sketchy website tells me that the number is surrounded by an aura of understanding, insight, and perception, so basically I've got nothing. The numbers could be arbitrary, and are just included to show us how more complex numbers with higher digits are constructed from the basic number symbols. I gotta level with you guys, these types of puzzles are not really my strong suit, and people much smarter than me will probably figure it out long before I do. If you're watching this and have decoded what all this means, please let me know in the comments so I can make updates accordingly. Let's talk about the Scythe now, assuming that's what it really is. As I'm sure you all know, the Scythe is strongly associated with death, symbolizing the transient nature of life and the fact it will inevitably come to an end, just as crops in a field will eventually be ready to harvest. While none of the 26 spirits Lily wields on her journey use this tool, it fits in perfectly with the themes of the game. You could think of Lily as the Grim Reaper in a way, since she literally brings quietus, death, to the inhabitants of Land's End, sending them on to the afterlife, with the twist being that death is a sweet mercy after the eternal suffering caused by the blight. The tool seems to be made from a combination of metal and bone, though the blade could possibly be a modified dragon's claw as well. Either way, it looks to be very old and might be a relic left over from the time of the ancients. Based on the Scythe's inclusion in this image, it seems very likely that the next Ender Lilies game could feature blight and purification like we see in Quietus of the Nights, perhaps leaning more into the soul-reaping ramifications of the act. Now, it's worth stating the obvious that at this point we really don't know what form the upcoming project will take. Back in January of this year, one of the developers mentioned in a Steam thread that they were tallying all requests for more content and alluded to DLCs and sequels specifically, but that's the only clue we've gotten. Some possibilities for this next project include DLC added to the game, DLC separate from the game, a true sequel, a prequel, and supplemental media. DLC added to the game would include things like new areas, spirits, and notes in the base game, and this could turn out quite interesting. The Hinterlands area in particular could easily be expanded. We learned from the King of the First Age that a remnant of the Ancients survived the genocide of their people, and chances are they subsisted out in the Hinterlands. Perhaps we could find a hidden village high in the rocky cliffs where these ancients and their kin had lived until the rain began to fall over the land, and a run-in with the Hinterlands dragon could be an engaging part of this area as well. With regard to the story, I would love to see some of Ender Lilies' supporting characters given more attention, especially Muriel and Phaedon. Fleshing out their backstory in star-crossed romance could give a lot of insight into the choices they made, and I would especially like to know if Muriel really was experimenting with blight restoration like I suggest in my Missing Link theory video. Other characters who could benefit from more attention are Julius and Hoenir, whose relationship as father and son is never really explored, and I would certainly be down to see more of Silva and Sigrid as well. Speaking of Silva, some of these ideas could also function as DLC separate from the game. Perhaps you could play as Silva or Fredia during the time of the Bastion defense and learn more about the events that transpired there, as well as what was happening in the Abyss with the Crimson Lord. Another possibility, and the one I'm personally hoping for, is a true sequel that picks up where the first game leaves off in Ending C. This ending does have great closure, and I don't think a sequel is strictly necessary, but there are some significant unsolved mysteries that could be addressed. For example, we are told that the land of the Ancients was split into 6 nations by the colonists, but we don't hear much about the other 5 besides Land's End. We can infer that 3 of the other nations fell to the Blight, as there is a single massive Blight invasion in each of the 3 ages that likely occurs once a nation is completely consumed and is drawn towards the Blighted Heart under Land's End, but that leaves 2 nations unaccounted for. Did the rain from Land's End reach them? Did they manage to survive even if it didn't? Perhaps Nymphilia was not the only priestess saved from the ancient war, and there are other living priestesses out there that Lily has yet to meet. We don't see what happens to the Blighted Heart or to Lily's spirit after her purification of the land, but I think it's safe to say that the Blight was dealt a heavy blow which may have severed Lily's connection to all of her blighted spirits except for the Umbral Knight, who of course is a special case. Seriously though, how cool would it be to play as an older, more experienced Lily who is more in tune with her magical abilities as a White Priestess, and has an even stronger bond with Farron? Moving on though, yet another option is that we get a prequel game, perhaps set in the time of the Ancients. We could learn all about their culture and about the original traditions of the White Priestesses, and could even witness the magical creation of the Blight in the first place. I've never been the biggest fan of prequels since I prefer not to know how a story ends from the moment it begins, but I have to admit there's a lot that could be done with this direction should the developers choose it. Last but not least, though probably least likely, is that we get some kind of supplemental media tied to the Ender Lilies IP. I'm specifically thinking about something like The Wanderer's Journal for Hollow Knight, a short book that lightly expands the world by showing it from a different perspective. This could certainly be done for Ender Lilies considering the depth of its world and characters, though personally I think this option is very unlikely, at least on its own. I'm willing to bet future content means some kind of gameplay, whether it be tied to the base game or completely new. Well, it's fun to speculate, but ultimately we'll just have to wait for more information before settling on ideas of what the future holds for Lily. In the meantime, why not learn more about the game's deep lore and how it might be expanded upon in these projects to come? If this interests you, I would recommend checking out my channel where I've been posting an ongoing series of videos digging deeply into the lore and trying to find answers to some of its biggest mysteries. Thank you so much for watching, and I would love to hear your own thoughts regarding this news in the comments below. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and would be interested in seeing more content like it, and I hope to see you again soon.